One of my favorite game genres is survival horror, and in my opinion, one of the best examples of modernizing the survival horror genre while still making it feel like a survival horror game was the Condemned series. And in that series, it was all about trying to survive by using found weapons and sometimes even shotguns, but oftentimes just random building materials or pipes that were strewn about the environment, and using that to defend yourself and traverse through the perverted world of those games. However, that series, for whatever reason, seems to have gone on a bit of a hiatus, and as a result, we haven't seen much from it beyond the second title, Bloodshot, which was released to a lot of mixed feedback for fans of the series, or two games that came out. And in this video, I'm going to go over why I still think those games hold up today, and why I really wish they would reboot or continue that series on some of the modern consoles that are out. So let's take a look. I played Condemned: Criminal Origins way back on the Xbox 360. I believe it was either a free demo or on a demo disc or something. And I ended up playing that first bit of that demo that you got to explore, where you're doing a crime scene investigation and get to experience some of the unique combat and story of that game. And then short after that, I ended up purchasing the game for my PC at that time, because I was still gaming on PC. And I remember finishing that title and really thinking to myself, this is a special type of survival horror. What I mean was, it wasn't the clunky, weird, jarring survival horror that we'd played on the PS2 and GameCube and Xbox of the previous generation. This felt like a logical progression of survival horror without watering down the actual survival elements, because one of the big things with that game was you always felt like you had something to defend yourself, but I never felt like I was overpowered. And I think that was a balance of that game that really made it feel special. And not to mention, the game favored a lot of melee combat over using weapons, and when you did have weapons, your ammo was relatively sparse. It felt like a more smooth version in some ways of Silent Hill 2, or let's just say a way smoother version of that game, because you were able to grab your weapons, block, deflect, do those sorts of things, but all still feel like you were able to pack a punch. But as you progress through the games, of course, some enemies got smarter, some enemies would ambush you, and those things really added a level of fear, as well as a level of feeling like you're trying hard to survive. And of course, the second game came out, and it carried a lot of those elements and in a lot of ways refined them very well. The problem was it became a little bit more action-oriented right through the middle part of the game, and the story kind of fell to the wayside. And when I mean fell to the wayside, it fell to my wayside of actually really caring about it. I felt like the game was almost trying too hard to explain its lore, and I know a lot of fans felt that way, and it kind of put a damper on the second entry. However, the thing that I think about that series that it did better than most games was it had a great level of balance, at least in the first one, right? You had a great level of balance and feeling like you have just enough power, but not enough, and you're trying to survive against really vicious enemies. Some who are strung out on drugs, some who are supernatural, depending on the areas that you're in. But it was a unique twist to me versus most survival horror games that I'd played up until that point. And the thing about that series that I also think is really special is the atmosphere to it was really well done. I really felt like, even in the second one, the developers knew the tone of the world in a really unique way, and they were able to flesh that out throughout the storylines, the environments, and even the sound design. And it really made the game feel isolated and lonely, but also made it feel really brutal, which was what that world was trying to go for. And that really lended well to a survival horror title like Condemned. And as it stands, it's really unfortunate that this series, as I understand, is not really going anywhere. I believe it to be a dead IP, because the closest we've ever got to, almost, I would even argue, a spiritual successor would have been almost like a Resident Evil 7, but even that didn't really have the same combat system and didn't really operate in the same way that Condemned did, where you're very isolated but also intimidated by these enemies who pop up out of nowhere, some even just ambushing you and coming at you in different angles that you're not expecting. And I think the other thing that it did really well was it just felt so aggressive, and you really felt that this world was not a good place to be. And it made it feel scary and horrifying in a lot of ways. And it's really a shame that we haven't seen many games that popped up like that since, because I think that Condemned 2 did a lot of excellent things to advance that series and did a lot of excellent things with its combat that made sense, made logical sense. You ended up throwing in more deeper environmental executions and a stronger hand-to-hand combat system, and these things really worked well. I think the downside was the game started to go a bit off the rails in the second half, and if we could have got a third title that dialed that down and took what made the first game feel so special and advanced it with some of the combat elements of the second game, I really feel this franchise would have grown into something great. And as a result, it's unfortunate that we're not really hearing much beyond that. And as it stands, the worst part to this is Condemned 2 is really hard to play unless you have a PS3 or an Xbox 360 set up, because it's not set up on any of the backwards compatible programs for either the PlayStation or Xbox, which really sucks because I've been revisiting that game slowly, but I have to pull out my 360 to play it. And it would just be really awesome if we saw something happen with that series, because in my opinion, I think a horror game like that did a lot of things so well, and it's so unfortunate to abandon that IP. So this is more of a retrospective and what I really liked about that series. And of course, as always, I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about those games, because to me, they were near and dear to my heart, and to this day, especially around Halloween time, I still revisit them. And I would love to see a game similar to that or another entry in that series even more. And it's unfortunate we're not seeing that. So I'd really love to hear your guys' thoughts. Leave those below. And again, thank you for watching.